Hello everyone and welcome back to the Horror Hut. Now, I know a lot of you use these videos to sleep, so before you drift off I thought it would be a fun idea if everyone can leave a comment to let me know where you are listening from in the world. Also like and subscribe if you are enjoying the episodes. Right, let's get comfy and relax and let's begin. I was out hiking solo in the wilderness, surrounded by towering trees and the sounds of nature. The sun was starting to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the forest floor. I'd been walking for hours, enjoying the solitude and the beauty of the wilderness. As I trudged along the narrow trail, my eyes caught sight of something in the distance, an old, abandoned cabin nestled among the trees. It looked like it had been there for years, forgotten by time. Curiosity piqued, I veered off the trail and made my way towards it. The cabin was weather-beaten and run down, but there was something strangely alluring about it. I pushed open the creaky door and stepped inside, the floorboards groaning beneath my weight. The interior was dark and musty, with dust motes dancing in the faint light filtering through the windows. It was clear that no one had lived here for a long time. I shivered, suddenly feeling a chill in the air. Despite the eerie atmosphere, I couldn't resist exploring further. I wandered through the rooms, running my fingers along the peeling wallpaper and cobweb-covered furniture. It was like stepping back in time. As I made my way to the back of the cabin, I stumbled upon a trapdoor hidden beneath a threadbare rug. My heart skipped a beat as I lifted the rug and peered into the darkness below. With a shaky breath, I descended into the cellar, the wooden steps creaking beneath my feet. The air was thick and musty, and a sense of unease settled over me like a heavy blanket. The cellar was small and cramped, with shelves lining the walls, filled with jars of preserved food and dusty old books. But as I scanned the room, my eyes landed on something that made my blood run cold, a makeshift altar, adorned with candles and strange symbols. My heart raced as I realized that I wasn't alone. Someone had been here, someone who practiced dark rituals in this remote cabin in the woods. Panic surged through me as I turned to leave, but before I could reach the stairs, I heard a sound behind me, a low, guttural growl that froze me in place. I spun around, heart pounding in my chest, and that's when I saw him, a man emerging from the shadows, his eyes wild with madness. I stumbled backward, my mind racing with fear. I tried to scream, but no sound escaped my lips as he advanced towards me, a sinister smile playing on his lips. I knew I had to get out of there, to escape before it was too late. With every ounce of strength I had left, I turned and bolted up the stairs, my heart pounding in my ears. I burst through the door and into the fading light of the setting sun, sprinting through the forest as fast as my legs could carry me. Branches clawed at my skin, and roots threatened to trip me up, but I didn't stop until I reached the safety of the trail. I didn't dare look back as I ran, the terror fueling my every step. It felt like hours before I finally emerged from the trees, gasping for breath and covered in sweat. But even as I collapsed on the ground, my heart still pounding with fear, I knew that I had escaped. I had survived the horror that lurked in the depths of the forest, and I would never forget the terror of that abandoned cabin in the woods. I was cruising through the desert, just me and the open road stretching out before me. The sun beat down relentlessly, turning the landscape into a shimmering mirage. I hadn't seen another car for miles, so when I spotted a minivan pulled over on the side of the road, I figured they must be in trouble. I slowed down and pulled up behind them, rolling down my window to see if they needed help. A man stepped out from the driver's seat, waving me over with a grateful smile. He looked to be in his 40s, with a tired expression and a dusty hat pulled low over his eyes. As I approached, he explained that their minivan had broken down, leaving them stranded in the middle of nowhere. He gestured towards the vehicle, where a woman and 2 children sat waiting in the shade of a nearby rock. Without hesitation, I offered to help. I had a toolbox in the back of my truck, and I figured I could at least take a look and see if I could get their engine running again. The man thanked me profusely, relief evident in his voice. I popped the hood and got to work, tinkering with the engine while the family watched anxiously from the shade. It didn't take long for me to diagnose the problem, a loose wire that had come disconnected. I quickly fixed it and slammed the hood shut, wiping my hands on my jeans. The man was overjoyed, shaking my hand and thanking me again and again. He insisted that I join them for dinner as a way of saying thanks, and though I was hesitant at first, I eventually agreed. After all, it was the least I could do. We piled into their minivan and set off down the road, the sun sinking lower in the sky. As we drove, the man made small talk, asking me about my life and where I was headed. I answered politely, though I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. We eventually arrived at their home, a rundown farmhouse nestled in the desert. It looked like something out of a horror movie, with peeling paint and broken windows. But I brushed off my unease, chalking it up to nerves. The man led me inside, where the smell of cooking food wafted through the air. The woman and children were waiting for us at the table, their smiles wide and welcoming. But as I took my seat, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. As we ate, the conversation turned to strange topics, things that didn't make sense in polite company. The man talked about his past, about how he had lost everything and had to start over from scratch. The woman and children sat in silence, their eyes fixed on me with an intensity that sent shivers down my spine. I tried to make excuses and leave, but the man insisted that I stay the night. He said it wasn't safe to drive in the dark, and that I could sleep on the couch until morning. Reluctantly, I agreed, though every fiber of my being screamed at me to get out while I still could. That night, I lay awake on the couch, the sound of the wind howling outside the only thing keeping me company. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was horribly wrong, that I was in danger. And then, in the dead of night, I heard it, the sound of footsteps creeping down the hallway towards me. My heart pounded in my chest as I sat up, straining to listen for any sign of danger. And that's when I saw them, the man, the woman, and the children, standing in the doorway, their eyes gleaming with malice. They were no longer the grateful family I had met on the side of the road. They were something else entirely, something dark and twisted. I knew I had to get out of there, to escape before it was too late. With a surge of adrenaline, I leaped off the couch and bolted for the door, ignoring their shouts and cries behind me. I sprinted through the darkness, the desert stretching out before me like an endless expanse of nothingness. I didn't stop until I reached my truck, panting and gasping for breath. With shaking hands, I fumbled for my keys and started the engine, tearing out of there as fast as I could. I didn't look back as I drove, the fear and adrenaline fueling my every move. And as the farmhouse disappeared in the rearview mirror, I knew that I had narrowly escaped the clutches of something unspeakably evil. But the memory of that night would haunt me forever, a reminder of the darkness that lurks in the most unexpected of places. I was backpacking through Europe, soaking in the sights and sounds of each new city I visited. But when I reached the mountains, I decided to take a break from civilization and go for a hike. It seemed like a good idea at the time, a chance to reconnect with nature and escape the crowds. I set out early in the morning, following a trail that wound its way through the dense forest. The air was crisp and cool, and the sunlight filtered through the trees in dappled patterns. It was peaceful, almost serene. But as I hiked deeper into the mountains, the trail started to become less defined. Trees crowded in on either side, obscuring my view of the surrounding landscape. I pushed on, confident that I could find my way back if I needed to. But then I made a wrong turn, just a small deviation from the path, but enough to send me off course. I didn't realize it at first, too caught up in the beauty of the forest to notice that I was lost. It wasn't until hours later that I started to panic. The sun was sinking lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the forest floor. I had no idea where I was or which way to go. I tried retracing my steps, but everything looked the same, trees stretching out in every direction, their branches tangled and twisted together. Panic gnawed at my stomach as I realized just how lost I was. I started to walk faster, my heart pounding in my chest. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig, sent me spiraling further into fear. I knew I had to find my way back to the trail before it was too late. But the forest seemed to stretch on forever, its depths unfathomable. I stumbled over roots and rocks, my breath coming in ragged gasps. It felt like I was being watched, like there were eyes on me from every direction. And then, just when I thought I couldn't go on, I saw it, a clearing up ahead, a break in the trees that promised safety and salvation. With renewed determination, I pushed forward, desperate to escape the suffocating grip of the forest. But as I stepped into the clearing, my heart sank. It wasn't the trail that awaited me, but a desolate expanse of rocky terrain, with no signs of civilization in sight. I sank to my knees, tears stinging my eyes as I realized the gravity of my situation. I was truly lost, with no one to help me and no way to find my way back. But even in my darkest moment, I refused to give up. With a shaky breath, I forced myself to stand and keep moving, determined to find my way out of the forest no matter what it took. And then, just when I thought all hope was lost, I heard it, the distant sound of voices, calling out through the trees. Relief flooded through me as I stumbled towards the sound, my legs aching and my throat raw with thirst. And then, just when I thought I couldn't go on, I burst through the trees and into the arms of a group of hikers who had been searching for me. They had heard my cries for help and had followed the sound, leading them straight to me. I collapsed into their arms, overcome with gratitude and exhaustion. I had made it out alive, but the memory of those dark woods would haunt me for the rest of my days. I was on assignment in a remote village, tasked with capturing the essence of its ancient culture through my camera lens. It was an exciting opportunity, but little did I know that it would lead me to the most terrifying experience of my life. As I wandered through the village, snapping photos of its quaint buildings and bustling marketplace, I stumbled upon a hidden entrance tucked away behind a crumbling stone wall. Intrigued, I pushed aside the overgrown vines and peered inside, my curiosity getting the better of me. To my surprise, I discovered a narrow staircase leading down into darkness. It was like something out of a movie, a hidden underground bunker, forgotten by time. Without thinking, I grabbed my camera and descended into the depths. The air grew stale and musty as I descended further into the bunker, my footsteps echoing off the damp walls. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, that there was something lurking in the shadows just out of sight. But I pushed aside my fear and pressed on, my curiosity driving me forward. As I explored the bunker, I stumbled upon ancient artifacts, pottery shards, ceremonial masks, and intricate carvings that spoke of a civilization long gone. But as I reached the deepest chamber of the bunker, I discovered something that chilled me to the bone, a stone altar, adorned with strange symbols and surrounded by flickering torches. It was like something out of a nightmare, a relic of a darker time. And then, without warning, I felt a presence in the room, a malevolent force that seemed to seep from the very walls themselves. I tried to flee, to escape the depths of the bunker, but it was too late. The force had awakened, and it had no intention of letting me leave. I felt a cold chill run down my spine as I realized that I was now alone in the bunker. There was something else down there with me, something ancient and powerful, something that wanted me dead. I tried to run, but the walls seemed to shift and close in around me, trapping me in the darkness. I could hear whispers echoing through the chamber, voices from another time calling out to me with promises of doom. Panic surged through me as I struggled to find a way out, but the bunker seemed to stretch on forever, its depths endless and unfathomable. I was lost, trapped in a labyrinth of darkness with no hope of escape. But even in the face of certain death, I refused to give up. With every ounce of strength I had left, I fought against the darkness, clawing my way towards the surface with a desperation born of fear. And then, just when I thought all hope was lost, I saw it, a glimmer of light shining through a crack in the wall. With renewed determination, I pushed myself towards it, ignoring the whispers and the shadows that reached out to grab me. And then, finally, I burst through the surface, gasping for breath as I emerged into the daylight. I collapsed onto the ground, exhausted and shaken, but alive. I had escaped the depths of the bunker, but the memory of that malevolent force would haunt me for the rest of my days. It was a reminder of the darkness that lurks in the most unexpected of places, waiting to ensnare those who dare to venture too close. I was a journalist on the trail of a big story, a series of mysterious disappearances in a small town that had the whole community on edge. I was determined to uncover the truth, no matter what it took. So when I received a tip about a possible lead in the surrounding forest, I didn't hesitate to investigate. Armed with my notebook and camera, I set out into the woods, determined to get to the bottom of the mystery. But as I ventured deeper into the forest, the trees closed in around me, their branches blocking out the sunlight and casting long shadows on the forest floor. I tried to stay focused, but the eerie silence of the woods unnerved me. I pressed on, following a faint trail that seemed to lead deeper into the heart of the forest. With each step, the feeling of unease grew stronger, like I was being watched by unseen eyes. And then, just when I thought I couldn't go on, I stumbled upon a clearing in the trees, a clearing that seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy. In the center of the clearing stood a group of people, dressed in tattered robes and chanting in a language I didn't understand. My heart pounded in my chest as I watched in horror, realizing that I had stumbled upon a sinister cult hiding in the woods. They seemed to sense my presence, turning towards me with eyes that gleamed with madness. I knew I had to get out of there, to escape before they noticed me, and I became their next victim. With a surge of adrenaline, I turned and ran, crashing through the underbrush with reckless abandon. But the cultists were out on my heels, their shouts echoing through the forest as they pursued me. I pushed myself harder, my lungs burning with exertion as I struggled to put distance between us. I didn't dare look back as I ran, the fear and panic driving me forward. It felt like hours before I finally emerged from the trees, gasping for breath and covered in sweat. But even as I collapsed on the forest floor, relief flooding through me, I knew that I couldn't rest for long. The cultists were still out there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for their chance to strike. With a shaky breath, I forced myself to stand and keep moving, determined to outwit them and escape with my life. It was a race against time, a battle of wits between me and the sinister force that lurked in the depths of the forest. I pushed aside my fear and pressed on, my senses on high alert as I navigated the treacherous terrain. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig, sent a shiver down my spine as I searched for a way out. And then, just when I thought all hope was lost, I saw it, a break in the trees up ahead, a glimmer of light that promised safety and salvation. With renewed determination, I pushed myself towards it, ignoring the pain and exhaustion that threatened to overwhelm me. And then, finally, I burst through the trees and into the open air, gasping for breath as I emerged into the daylight. I collapsed onto the ground, exhausted and shaken, but alive. I was out on a wilderness expedition, just me and the vast expanse of the forest stretching out before me. I'd been trekking through the woods for days, relying on my survival skills to navigate the rugged terrain. But as I ventured deeper into the forest, I started to notice something strange, markings carved into the trees, like some kind of twisted trail marker. At first, I brushed it off as nothing more than the work of a bored hiker, but the further I followed the trail, the more ominous it became. The markings seemed to lead deeper into the heart of the forest, away from the safety of the main trail. But I couldn't resist the urge to follow them, my curiosity getting the better of me. As I pushed deeper into the woods, the air grew thick with tension, like a storm brewing on the horizon. I felt a sense of unease settle over me as I realized that I was now alone in the forest. And then, just when I thought I couldn't go on, I stumbled upon a clearing in the trees, a clearing that seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy. In the center of the clearing stood a makeshift campsite, with a fire pit surrounded by discarded cans and bottles. But what caught my eye was the figure standing at the edge of the clearing, a man dressed in camouflage, his eyes gleaming with madness. He was armed with a rifle, and his gaze locked onto me with a predatory intensity. Panic surged through me as I realized that I had stumbled upon a deranged hunter's territory. He had been tracking me, leading me into his deadly trap with those twisted trail markings. I knew I had to get out of there, to escape before he caught up to me, and I became his next target. With a surge of adrenaline, I turned and ran, crashing through the underbrush with reckless abandon. But the hunter was hot on my heels, his shouts echoing through the forest as he pursued me. I pushed myself harder, my lungs burning with exertion as I struggled to put distance between us. I didn't dare look back as I ran, the fear and panic driving me forward. It felt like hours before I finally emerged from the trees, gasping for breath and covered in sweat. But even as I collapsed on the forest floor, relief flooding through me, I knew that I couldn't rest for long. The hunter was still out there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for his chance to strike. With a shaky breath, I forced myself to stand and keep moving, determined to outwit him and escape with my life. It was a race against time, a battle of wits between me and the deranged hunter who stalked the forest like a predator. I pushed aside my fear and pressed on, my senses on high alert as I navigated the treacherous terrain. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig, sent a shiver down my spine as I searched for a way out. And then, just when I thought all hope was lost, I saw it, a break in the trees up ahead, a glimmer of light that promised safety and salvation. With renewed determination, I pushed myself towards it, ignoring the pain and exhaustion that threatened to overwhelm me. And then, finally, I burst through the trees and into the open air, gasping for breath as I emerged into the daylight. I collapsed onto the ground, exhausted and shaken, but alive. I had escaped the clutches of the deranged hunter. My wife and I were on a road trip, excited to explore new places and create memories together as newlyweds. But when our car broke down in the middle of nowhere, our adventure took a terrifying turn. We found ourselves stranded on a desolate stretch of countryside, with nothing but empty fields stretching out in every direction. Panic started to set in as we realized just how isolated we were. We tried to call for help, but there was no signal on our phones. We were completely cut off from the outside world, with no way to contact anyone for assistance. As we waited for help to arrive, the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the landscape. The air grew cold and still, and a sense of unease settled over us like a heavy blanket. And then, just when we thought things couldn't get any worse, we heard the sound of approaching footsteps. We turned to see a group of locals emerging from the darkness, their faces twisted into menacing sneers. We tried to reason with them, to explain our situation and ask for help, but they only laughed and taunted us. It was clear that they had sinister intentions, and we knew we were in danger. With mounting fear, we huddled together in the car, hoping that help would arrive soon. But the locals showed no signs of leaving, their presence a constant reminder of the peril we were in. As the night wore on, the atmosphere grew increasingly tense. We could hear them whispering outside the car, their voices filled with malice and hatred. And then, just when we thought things couldn't get any worse, they started to rock the car back and forth, pounding on the windows with their fists. We were trapped, with no way to escape their relentless onslaught. Panic surged through us as we realized that we were at the mercy of these hostile strangers. We were completely helpless, with no one to turn to for assistance. But even in the face of certain death, we refused to give up hope. With every ounce of strength we had left, we fought to survive, clinging to each other in the darkness. And then, just when we thought all hope was lost, we heard the sound of approaching headlights. Relief flooded through us as a car pulled up beside ours, its occupants stepping out to confront the hostile locals. With their help, we were able to escape the terrifying ordeal and make our way to safety. But the memory of that harrowing night would haunt us for the rest of our lives, a stark reminder of the dangers that lurk in the darkness. I'm a truck driver, hauling freight across the country on a regular basis. It's a lonely job, spending long hours on the road with nothing but the hum of the engine and the endless stretch of highway to keep me company. But I never expected my latest delivery to turn into a nightmare. It was late at night when I pulled into a rest stop, the darkness swallowing the landscape like a thick blanket. I was tired and ready to call it a night, but I still had a long way to go before I reached my destination. As I climbed out of the cab and stretched my legs, I noticed a figure standing at the edge of the parking lot, a lone hitchhiker, holding a sign that read west. I hesitated for a moment, unsure if I should offer the stranger a ride. There was something off about him, something that sent a shiver down my spine. But before I could make up my mind, the hitchhiker approached me, his eyes gleaming in the darkness. He was tall and gaunt, with a wild look about him that made my skin crawl. He asked for a ride, his voice low and raspy. I tried to refuse, to tell him that I couldn't take passengers, but he wouldn't take no for an answer. Reluctantly, I agreed to give him a lift, hoping to shake off the feeling of unease that had settled over me. But as he climbed into the cab and settled into the passenger seat, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. As we drove down the deserted highway, the hitchhiker grew increasingly agitated, his movements jerky and erratic. He kept glancing out the window, as if he were expecting something, or someone, to appear out of the darkness. I tried to make small talk, to keep the atmosphere light and friendly, but the hitchhiker didn't seem interested in conversation. He just stared straight ahead, his eyes fixed on the road ahead with an intensity that sent chills down my spine. And then, just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, he pulled a knife from his pocket and pressed it against my throat. Panic surged through me as I realized that I was in mortal danger. He demanded that I pull over, his voice low and menacing. I knew I had to act fast if I wanted to survive. With trembling hands, I reached for the emergency button on my dashboard, hoping to summon help before it was too late. But before I could press it, the hitchhiker lunged at me, his knife slicing through the air with deadly precision. I managed to wrestle the knife away from him, but not before he landed a blow to my shoulder. Pain shot through me as I fought to keep control of the truck, my vision swimming with adrenaline and fear. But even as I struggled to maintain control, the hitchhiker kept coming at me, his eyes filled with madness. I knew I had to get him out of the cab before he killed me. With one final burst of strength, I slammed on the brakes and sent the truck skidding to a halt. The hitchhiker was thrown against the dashboard, giving me the opening I needed to push him out of the cab and onto the side of the road. As he lay there, stunned and disoriented, I seized the opportunity to escape. I climbed out of the cab and ran as fast as I could, putting as much distance between myself and the hitchhiker as possible. And then, just when I thought all hope was lost, I saw the lights of an approaching vehicle up ahead. With renewed determination, I flagged them down and begged for help, my hands shaking with adrenaline and exhaustion. With their assistance, I was able to get to safety and receive medical attention for my injuries. It was a terrifying ordeal that I'll never forget, a reminder of the dangers that lurk in the darkness for those who dare to trust the wrong person. I'm a wildlife biologist, spending my days studying animal behavior in the secluded depths of the forest. It's a solitary job, but I thrive on the challenge of unraveling the mysteries of nature. On one particular expedition, I found myself deep in the heart of the forest, observing a pack of wolves as they hunted their prey. But as I watched from my hidden vantage point, I noticed something strange. The wolves were exhibiting aggressive behavior unlike anything I had ever seen before. At first, I chalked it up to natural instincts, but as I continued to observe, I realized that there was something more going on. The wolves seemed to be working together with a sense of purpose, as if they were being controlled by some unseen force. Intrigued, I decided to investigate further, determined to uncover the truth behind their strange behavior. But as I ventured deeper into the forest, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. And then, just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, I stumbled upon a clearing in the trees, a clearing that seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy. In the center of the clearing stood a group of people, their faces obscured by masks as they chanted in a language I didn't understand. I watched in horror as the wolves gathered around them, their eyes gleaming with a malevolent light. It was like something out of a nightmare, a twisted ritual that seemed to bind the wolves to the will of their human masters. Panic surged through me as I realized that I was in grave danger. I knew I had to get out of there before the wolves and their mysterious handlers noticed me. With trembling hands, I backed away from the clearing, my heart pounding in my chest as I tried to make sense of what I had just witnessed. But before I could escape, I heard the sound of footsteps approaching from behind. I turned to see a group of masked figures emerging from the trees, their eyes fixed on me with an intensity that sent a shiver down my spine. I knew I had to get out of there, to escape before they caught up to me and I became their next victim. With adrenaline coursing through my veins, I turned and ran, crashing through the underbrush with reckless abandon. I could hear the wolves howling in the distance, their voices echoing through the forest like a chorus of doom. But even as I fled, I knew that I couldn't outrun them forever. I needed to find a way to outsmart them, to use my knowledge of the forest to my advantage. With every step, I searched for a way out, my senses on high alert as I navigated the treacherous terrain. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig, sent a jolt of fear through me as I raced against time to escape the relentless pursuit of the wolves and their sinister handlers. And then, just when I thought all hope was lost, I caught sight of a narrow passageway up ahead, a glimmer of light shining through the darkness like a beacon of hope. With renewed determination, I pushed myself towards it, ignoring the pain and exhaustion that threatened to overwhelm me. And then, finally, I burst through the surface and into the open air, gasping for breath as I emerged from the depths of the forest. I collapsed onto the ground, exhausted and shaken, but alive. I am a backpacker, exploring the rugged coastline in search of adventure and solitude. It's just me, the sound of the crashing waves, and the endless expanse of the sea stretching out before me. But as I hiked along the coastline, I stumbled upon a hidden sea cave nestled in the rocky cliffs. Intrigued, I decided to explore further, eager to see what secrets lay hidden within its depths. As I entered the cave, the air grew cooler and the sound of the waves faded into the distance. I moved deeper into the darkness, my flashlight casting long shadows on the walls. But then, just when I thought I had seen everything the cave had to offer, I heard the sound of footsteps echoing off the walls. Panic surged through me as I realized that I was now alone. I froze in place, my heart pounding in my chest as I strained to listen for any sign of danger. But the footsteps grew closer, and I knew I had to act fast if I wanted to escape. With trembling hands, I searched for a way out, but the walls of the cave seemed to close in around me, trapping me in their suffocating embrace. And then, just when I thought all hope was lost, I caught sight of a narrow passageway up ahead, a glimmer of light shining through the darkness like a beacon of hope. With renewed determination, I pushed myself towards it, ignoring the pain and exhaustion that threatened to overwhelm me. But as I emerged from the cave and into the open air, relief flooded through me. I collapsed onto the rocky shore, gasping for breath as I looked out at the vast expanse of the sea. I had escaped the clutches of the strange men, but the experience will last in my head forever. I am a park ranger, responsible for patrolling a vast wilderness reserve nestled deep in the forest. It's a job that requires vigilance and a keen eye for any signs of trouble. One day, as I was making my rounds, I stumbled upon an abandoned campsite hidden among the trees. At first, I thought nothing of it. Campers often come and go without a trace. But as I approached, a sense of unease settled over me. The campsite was in disarray, with tents torn and belongings strewn about as if there had been a struggle. My heart rate quickened as I realized that something wasn't right. I scanned the area for any signs of life, but there was no one in sight. The forest was eerily quiet, as if holding its breath in anticipation of what was to come. With a growing sense of dread, I began to search the campsite for clues. It didn't take long for me to find evidence of a recent struggle. Bloodstains on the ground, broken branches, and torn clothing littered the area. Panic surged through me as I realized that someone, or something, had attacked the campers. I knew I had to find out what had happened and ensure the safety of anyone still in the area. With my flashlight in hand, I ventured deeper into the forest, following a trail of broken branches and disturbed underbrush. Every sound seemed amplified in the darkness, sending a chill down my spine. And then, just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, I heard the sound of footsteps approaching from behind. I spun around, my heart pounding in my chest as I searched for the source of the noise. But there was no one there, just the empty expanse of the forest stretching out before me. I tried to shake off the feeling of dread that settled over me, but it clung to me like a shadow. With trembling hands, I continued to search the area, my senses on high alert as I scanned the darkness for any sign of danger. But the forest seemed to hold its secrets close, refusing to reveal the truth of what had happened. And then, just when I thought all hope was lost, I caught sight of a figure lurking in the shadows, a man dressed in tattered clothing, his eyes wild with madness. Panic surged through me as I realized that he was the one responsible for the attack on the campsite. With adrenaline coursing through my veins, I lunged forward and tackled him to the ground, pinning him down with all the strength I had left. But he fought back with a ferocity that caught me off guard, his nails digging into my skin as he struggled to break free. With every ounce of strength I had left, I managed to subdue him and bind his hands with a length of rope. And then, with the help of backup that arrived just in time, I escorted him out of the forest and into custody. As I emerged from the darkness of the forest and into the light of day, relief flooded through me. I had survived the encounter with the deranged attacker. I am a mountaineer, always seeking the next challenge in my quest to conquer the tallest peaks. One day, I found myself scaling a treacherous peak, the wind whipping around me as I fought my way up the steep incline. But just when I thought I had reached the summit, a sudden blizzard descended upon the mountain, engulfing me in a swirling mass of snow and ice. I struggled to find my way through the whiteout conditions, the biting cold gnawing at my bones as I searched for shelter. With each step, the snow grew deeper and the wind stronger, threatening to sweep me off the mountain and into the abyss below. But I refused to give up, determined to find a way to survive the storm. And then, just when I thought all hope was lost, I stumbled upon a group of stranded climbers huddled together in the snow. Relief flooded through me as I realized that I wasn't alone in the storm. But as I approached, a sense of unease settled over me. There was something strange about the way they looked at me, their eyes cold and calculating as they assessed me from head to toe. Panic surged through me as I realized that they were not here to offer me shelter. They were here to take advantage of my vulnerability. I knew I had to find a way to escape before it was too late. With trembling hands, I searched for a way out, but the blizzard raged on around me, obscuring my vision and disorienting me in the whiteout conditions. I could feel the weight of their gaze bearing down on me, as if they were waiting for the perfect moment to strike. But just as I thought things couldn't get any worse, one of the climbers lunged forward and grabbed me by the arm, his grip like a vice around my wrist. Panic surged through me as I struggled to break free, but he was too strong, his fingers digging into my flesh like talons. With every ounce of strength I had left, I fought against him, kicking and thrashing as I tried to break free from his grasp. But he held on tight, his grip unyielding as he dragged me towards the edge of the cliff. Desperation surged through me as I realized that he intended to throw me off the mountain and into the abyss below. I knew I had to find a way to escape, to outsmart him and find a way to survive the deadly game he was playing. With adrenaline coursing through my veins, I summoned every ounce of strength I had left and managed to break free from his grasp. And then, with a burst of speed, I raced away from the edge of the cliff and into the safety of the storm. But even as I fled, I knew that I couldn't outrun them forever. I needed to find a way to outsmart them, to use my knowledge of the mountain to my advantage. With every step, I searched for a way out, my senses on high alert as I navigated the treacherous terrain. Every gust of wind, every crack of thunder, sent a jolt of fear through me as I raced against time to escape the clutches of the stranded climbers with sinister intentions. And then, just when I thought all hope was lost, I caught sight of a narrow passageway up ahead, a glimmer of light shining through the darkness like a beacon of hope. With renewed determination, I pushed myself towards it, ignoring the pain and exhaustion that threatened to overwhelm me. And then, finally, I burst through the surface and into the open air, gasping for breath as I emerged from the depths of the blizzard. I collapsed onto the snow-covered ground, exhausted and shaken, but alive. I had escaped the clutches of the stranded climbers with sinister intentions, but the memory of that terrifying encounter would haunt me for the rest of my days. It was a stark reminder of the dangers that lurk in the unforgiving wilderness, waiting to ensnare those who dare to venture too close. I was out in this remote valley, just trying to get some dope shots of nature for my photography gig. It was already getting dark, but I was all about that golden hour vibe, you feel me? So, I'm setting up my gear, getting ready to capture some epic sunset shots, when I see these weird lights in the sky. At first, I'm thinking it's just some planes or something, but these lights, man, they were moving in ways planes ain't supposed to move. Zigzagging, hovering, all kinds of crazy stuff. I'm like, what the heck is going on? So, being the curious idiot that I am, I decide to follow them. I trek through the woods, following those lights deeper and deeper into the valley. The whole time, I'm feeling this weird mix of excitement and dread, like I know I shouldn't be messing with whatever this is, but I can't stop myself. Finally, after what feels like forever, I come to this clearing, and that's when I see it. A freaking secret government facility hidden in the mountains. I'm talking fences topped with razor wire, guards patrolling with guns, the whole 9 yards. Now, I'm freaking out, right? Like, I'm just a nature photographer trying to get some cool shots, and here I am stumbling onto some top secret government stuff. But at the same time, I gotta know what's going on. So, I start sneaking closer, trying to stay hidden in the shadows. And that's when I see them bringing in these crates, big metal ones, like something out of a sci-fi movie. And the guards, man, they're armed to the teeth, looking all serious and stuff. I'm thinking maybe I should just turn around and hightail it out of there, but then I hear this voice behind me. Freeze. Don't move. I spin around, and there's this guard aiming his gun right at me. My heart's pounding so hard I can barely breathe. He starts yelling at me, asking me what I'm doing there, who I am, all that stuff. I'm stuttering and stammering, trying to come up with some excuse, but before I know it, they've got me handcuffed and thrown in the back of a van. Next thing I know, I'm being interrogated by these government guys, asking me a bunch of questions about what I saw, who I told, all that jazz. I'm trying to play it cool, but inside, I'm freaking out. They keep me locked up for what feels like forever, grilling me about every little detail. And then, just when I'm about to lose my mind, they let me go. No explanation, no apology, nothing. I stumble out of that facility, feeling like I just stepped into the twilight zone. And the whole way home, I'm thinking about those lights, those crates, and wondering what the heck I stumbled onto out there in the woods. But one thing's for sure, I ain't going back there anytime soon. I was leading this group of tourists on a camping trip in the middle of nowhere. We were deep in the forest, surrounded by towering trees and the sounds of nature all around us. Everything seemed normal, just another day in the woods. But then, we stumbled upon this weird stone circle hidden among the trees. It was like something out of a horror movie, all ancient and ominous looking. I should have known better than to mess with stuff like that, but curiosity got the best of me. I started poking around the circle, trying to figure out what it was all about. And that's when things started to get weird. The air around us felt heavy, like there was something watching us from the shadows. Suddenly, one of the tourists let out this blood-curdling scream. I spun around, and that's when I saw it. This thing emerging from the trees. It was like nothing I'd ever seen before, all twisted and monstrous. I tried to grab my flashlight, but my hands were shaking so bad, I could barely hold onto it. The tourists were panicking, screaming, and running in every direction. I wanted to run too, but I couldn't leave them behind. I shouted for everyone to stick together, to follow me back to camp. But the thing, it was right on our heels, like it was toying with us, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. We finally made it back to camp, but the thing wasn't done with us yet. It started circling around our campsite, growling and snarling like some kind of wild animal. I knew we were in deep trouble. I tried to keep the tourists calm, but inside, I was freaking out. I didn't know what to do, how to protect them from this thing that seemed unstoppable. But then, I remembered something I'd read in a survival guide once. It said that sometimes, the best defense is a good offense. So, I grabbed the biggest stick I could find and I charged at the thing, screaming like a madman. To my surprise, it worked. The thing hesitated, like it wasn't expecting us to fight back. And in that moment of hesitation, I swung with all my might, striking it right in the face. The thing let out this ear-splitting screech, and then it was gone. Just like that, vanished into thin air. I couldn't believe it. We actually survived. We packed up our stuff and got the hell out of there as fast as we could. I didn't stop running until we were miles away from the cursed stone circle. I don't know what that thing was, or where it came from. But I do know one thing. I'm never going back into those woods again. Not if I can help it. I was out there, just me in the jungle. It was dense, like every step I took was into another world. I was searching for something, I don't know what, just chasing that feeling of adventure. Then, I stumbled upon this clearing, and in the middle of it was this village. It was like something out of a history book, all huts and thatched roofs. I couldn't believe it. I heard rumors about hidden tribes in the jungle, but I never thought I'd actually find one. I approached the village cautiously, not wanting to startle anyone. But as soon as I got close, the villagers came pouring out of their huts, staring at me like I was some kind of alien. I tried to communicate with them, but we didn't speak the same language. It was frustrating, you know, like trying to talk to a brick wall. But I wasn't about to give up. I needed to know more about these people, about their way of life. So, I stuck around, trying to pick up on their customs and rituals. And that's when things started to get weird. I noticed these strange symbols painted on the walls of their huts, symbols that I couldn't make heads or tails of. I tried asking the villagers about them, but they just gave me these blank stares, like they didn't know what I was talking about. It was like they were hiding something from me, something dark and sinister. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, that there was something lurking in the shadows, just out of sight. But every time I turned around, there was nothing there, just a jungle, stretching out in every direction. I started to feel like I was losing my mind, like the jungle was playing tricks on me. But then, one night, I saw something that chilled me to the bone. I was wandering through the village, trying to clear my head, when I heard this chanting coming from the center of town. I followed the sound, and that's when I saw them. The villagers gathered around this bonfire, chanting and swaying like something out of a cult. I watched in horror as they started to dance, their movements becoming more and more frenzied. And then, I saw it. In the center of the circle, there was this thing. It was like nothing I'd ever seen before, all twisted and grotesque. I wanted to run, to get as far away from that village as possible. But something held me back, some morbid curiosity that I couldn't shake. And then, the thing spoke. Its voice was like nails on a chalkboard, grating and inhuman. It spoke in a language I couldn't understand, but the villagers seemed to hang on its every word. I watched in horror as they offered it sacrifices, animals, and other things. And then, they turned their eyes on me, like I was next in line. I knew I had to get out of there, and fast. So, I turned and ran, not stopping until I was deep in the jungle, far away from the cursed village. I don't know what I stumbled upon out there in the jungle, and I don't think I want to know. All I know is that I'll never forget the terror I felt that night, the feeling of being watched by something ancient and evil. And I pray that I never have to experience anything like it again. I'm a survivalist, someone who thrives on the challenge of the great outdoors. So when I decided to embark on a solo camping trip deep in the wilderness, I knew I was in for an adventure. But as I set up camp in a secluded clearing, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right. The forest seemed eerily quiet, as if the very trees were holding their breath in anticipation of something sinister. And then, just as I was settling in for the night, I heard the sound of voices echoing through the trees, low and guttural, like the growls of wild animals. Panic surged through me as I realized that I was now alone in the wilderness. With my heart pounding in my chest, I crouched down low and listened intently, trying to make out what the voices were saying. But their words were muffled and indistinct, carried away on the wind before I could decipher them. I knew I had to act fast if I wanted to avoid detection. With trembling hands, I doused the fire and packed up my gear, moving silently through the trees like a shadow in the night. But just when I thought I had escaped the poachers' notice, I stumbled upon their camp hidden deep in the forest. My blood ran cold as I caught sight of them, a group of men armed to the teeth with rifles and machetes, their faces obscured by the darkness. Panic surged through me as I realized that I was outnumbered and outgunned. I knew I had to find a way to evade capture and make it out of the forest alive. With adrenaline coursing through my veins, I ducked behind a tree and waited for the perfect moment to make my move. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig, sent a jolt of fear through me as I waited for the poachers to pass by. And then, just when I thought all hope was lost, I caught sight of something moving in the darkness, something far more sinister than I could have ever imagined. It was a creature unlike anything I had ever seen before, its eyes glowing with an otherworldly light as it prowled through the trees. Panic surged through me as I realized that the poachers were not just hunting animals, they were hunting something far more dangerous. And I knew that if they caught sight of me, I would be next on their list. With every ounce of strength I had left, I pushed myself to my feet and raced through the forest, the sound of my footsteps echoing off the trees as I fled for my life. But the creature was hot on my trail, its growls echoing through the darkness like a death knell. And then, just when I thought I couldn't run any longer, I stumbled upon a narrow ravine hidden deep in the heart of the forest. With no other options left, I leaped into the darkness and prayed that I would survive the fall. Miraculously, I landed safely at the bottom of the ravine, my body battered and bruised but still alive. I lay there for what felt like hours, listening intently for any sign of danger. But the forest was eerily silent, as if the very trees were holding their breath in anticipation of what was to come. With trembling hands, I pushed myself to my feet and began to make my way out of the ravine and back to safety. And then, finally, I emerged from the darkness of the forest and into the light of day. Relief flooded through me as I realized that I had escaped the clutches of the poachers and the creature that hunted in their midst. I was out there, just me in the woods. I set up camp in this remote clearing, thinking it was the perfect spot for the night. Everything seemed normal, just the sounds of the forest all around me. But as night fell, things started to get weird. I heard this distant drumming, like something out of a tribal ritual. At first, I thought maybe it was just my imagination, but then I heard the chanting. It was faint at first, barely audible over the rustling of the trees. But as the night wore on, it got louder and louder, like it was coming from all around me. I tried to ignore it, to focus on getting some sleep. But every time I closed my eyes, I could hear those drums pounding in my head. I started to feel this sense of unease, like I was being watched. I wanted to pack up and get out of there, but something held me back, some morbid curiosity that I couldn't shake. I tried to convince myself that it was just a bunch of locals having a party or something, but deep down, I knew there was something more sinister going on. I lay there in my tent, listening to the chanting, feeling more and more like I was in some kind of nightmare. And then, just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, I heard footsteps outside my tent. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. I wanted to scream, to run, but I was paralyzed with fear. The footsteps grew closer and closer, until they were right outside my tent. And then, just as suddenly as they had appeared, they stopped. I lay there, holding my breath, waiting for something to happen. But nothing did. The forest was silent once again, like nothing had ever happened. I don't know how long I lay there, too terrified to move. But eventually, exhaustion took over, and I must have fallen asleep. When I woke up the next morning, the forest was quiet, like nothing had ever happened. But the memory of that night still haunts me, like a dark shadow lurking in the back of my mind. I packed up my camp as quickly as I could and got out of there, vowing never to return to that cursed clearing again. And even now, as I sit here writing this, I can still hear the distant echo of those drums, reminding me of the darkness that lurks in the heart of the woods. I was driving down this empty highway, miles of nothing but desert on either side. My car had broken down, and I was stranded in the middle of nowhere. I was starting to panic, wondering how I was going to get out of this mess. And then, out of nowhere, this truck pulls up beside me. The driver rolls down his window and asks if I need a lift. I was hesitant at first, not wanting to get into a car with a stranger. But I didn't really have much of a choice. So, I climbed into the truck, grateful for the ride. The driver seemed friendly enough, making small talk as we drove deeper into the countryside. But as we got further and further from civilization, something didn't feel right. The driver kept glancing at me out of the corner of his eye, like he was sizing me up or something. I tried to ignore it, telling myself I was just being paranoid. But then, he started asking these weird questions, like if I lived alone, if anyone knew I was out here, stuff like that. I started to feel this sense of unease, like maybe I'd made a mistake getting into this guy's truck. But before I could say anything, he suddenly pulled off onto this dirt road, miles from the nearest town. I asked him where we were going, but he just laughed and said he had a surprise for me. I felt my stomach drop, like I was in some kind of horror movie. I tried to keep calm, telling myself that maybe he was just taking a shortcut or something. But as we drove deeper into the countryside, I started to realize that something was seriously wrong. The road got narrower and narrower, until it was little more than a dirt track winding through the desert. And then, just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, the truck started to slow down. I asked the driver what was going on, but he didn't answer. He just kept driving, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. And then, out of nowhere, he stopped the truck. We were in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by nothing but desert for miles in every direction. I knew I had to get out of there, but before I could make a move, the driver turned to me with this sickening smile on his face. He said something about how he liked to take his time with his victims, how he enjoyed the chase. And then, before I could react, he lunged at me, grabbing me by the throat. I fought back with everything I had, screaming for help as he tried to drag me out of the truck. But he was too strong, too determined to see his sick plans through. And then, just when it seemed like all hope was lost, I heard the sound of approaching headlights. It was another car, coming down the road towards us. The driver must have heard it too, because he suddenly let go of me and jumped back into his truck, speeding off into the night. I stumbled out of the truck, shaking with fear and adrenaline. The driver of the other car pulled up beside me, asking if I was okay. I told him what had happened, and he offered to give me a ride to the nearest town. I was too shaken up to refuse, grateful for the chance to get away from that nightmare. As we drove off into the night, leaving the desert and the memory of that twisted truck driver behind, I couldn't help but wonder what would have happened if that other car hadn't come along when it did. But one thing's for sure, I'll never forget the terror I felt that night, stranded on that desolate stretch of highway. And I'll never take rides from strangers again. I'm a wildlife biologist, spending my days knee-deep in the murky waters of a remote swamp, studying the fascinating creatures that call this place home. It's a solitary existence, but one that I've grown accustomed to over the years. One day, as I was navigating my way through the dense underbrush, I stumbled upon an abandoned shack hidden among the marshes. At first, I thought nothing of it. Abandoned structures are not uncommon in these parts. But as I approached, a sense of unease settled over me. There was something about the shack that seemed out of place, as if it didn't belong in the wilderness. With a sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach, I pushed open the door and stepped inside. The air was thick with the smell of damp and decay, and I could feel the weight of centuries pressing down on me. As I explored the interior of the shack, I found evidence of recent human activity, empty food cans, discarded clothing, and other signs that someone had been living here not too long ago. Panic surged through me as I realized that I was now alone in the swamp. With my heart pounding in my chest, I searched for any clues that might reveal the identity of the person or persons who had been staying in the shack. But the more I looked, the more questions I had. And then, just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, I heard the sound of footsteps approaching from outside. Panic surged through me as I realized that whoever was out there was getting closer by the second. With trembling hands, I searched for a place to hide, but the shack offered little in the way of cover. I knew I had to find a way to escape before whoever was outside found me. With adrenaline coursing through my veins, I made a split-second decision and dashed out the back door, disappearing into the thick underbrush of the swamp. Every sound seemed amplified in the darkness, sending a chill down my spine as I struggled to remain silent. And then, just when I thought all hope was lost, I caught sight of a figure lurking in the shadows, a man dressed in tattered clothing, his eyes wild with madness. Panic surged through me as I realized that he was the one who had been staying in the shack. With every ounce of strength I had left, I pushed myself to my feet and raced through the swamp, the sound of my footsteps echoing off the trees as I fled for my life. But the man was hot on my trail, his laughter echoing through the darkness like a death knell. And then, just when I thought I couldn't run any longer, I stumbled upon a narrow path hidden among the trees. With no other options left, I followed it deeper into the heart of the swamp, praying that it would lead me to safety. Miraculously, the path eventually led me out of the swamp and into the safety of the open air. Relief flooded through me as I realized that I had escaped the clutches of the man in the shack. I was hiking in this uncharted mountain range, just me in the wilderness. I was searching for a new trail, something off the beaten path, you know? That's when I stumbled upon these strange symbols carved into the rocks. They were like nothing I'd ever seen before, all intricate and mysterious. I was curious, so I started following the trail of symbols, thinking maybe they'd lead me to something cool. But the further I went, the more uneasy I felt. It was like I was being watched, like something didn't want me there. And then, out of nowhere, I stumbled upon this clearing. There were these makeshift shelters, all camouflaged and hidden among the trees. At first, I thought maybe it was just some kind of survivalist camp, but then I saw the people. They were armed to the teeth, watching me with suspicious eyes. I tried to explain that I was just a hiker, that I meant no harm, but they weren't having it. They told me I wasn't allowed to leave, that I knew too much. I tried to protest, to argue my way out of it, but they wouldn't listen. They said they couldn't risk me going back and telling anyone about their camp. I felt this chill run down my spine, like I'd stumbled into something I shouldn't have. I knew I had to get out of there, but with those survivalists blocking my way, I didn't know how. I tried to reason with them, to appeal to their humanity, but they were cold and unyielding. They said they had rules, that outsiders weren't welcome in their territory. I was starting to panic, wondering if I'd ever make it out of there alive. But then, just when I thought all hope was lost, I saw my chance. One of the survivalists let his guard down for just a moment, and I seized the opportunity. I bolted into the trees, running as fast as I could, praying that I wouldn't get shot in the back. I could hear them shouting behind me, their voices growing fainter as I put more distance between us. I didn't stop running until I was miles away from that cursed camp. I stumbled out of the woods, shaking with fear and exhaustion. But I was alive, and that's all that mattered. I vowed never to go back to that mountain range again, to stay as far away from those survivalists as possible. But even now, as I sit here writing this, I can't shake the feeling that they're still out there, watching and waiting for their next unsuspecting victim. And I pray that no one else ever has to experience what I went through that day. I was on assignment in this remote coastal town, tasked with capturing the rugged beauty of the shoreline. The air was salty and thick with the sound of crashing waves as I ventured out with my camera, eager to capture some breathtaking shots. As I explored, I stumbled upon this old fishing village tucked away on the edge of a cliff. It looked like it had been abandoned in haste, with empty houses and overturned boats scattered about. I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease as I wandered through the deserted streets. There was something eerie about the place, like it was frozen in time. I started snapping photos, trying to capture the haunting beauty of the abandoned village. But the deeper I ventured, the more I felt like I was being watched. I tried to brush it off, telling myself it was just my imagination. But then, I heard it. A faint whisper, carried on the wind, like someone calling out to me from the shadows. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. I wanted to run, to get as far away from that place as possible. But something compelled me to stay, to keep exploring despite the growing sense of dread in the pit of my stomach. And that's when I saw her. A young girl, standing at the edge of the cliff, her hair whipping in the wind. She looked so out of place, like she didn't belong in this abandoned village. I called out to her, asking if she was okay. But she didn't respond. She just stood there, staring out at the sea with empty eyes. I approached her cautiously, trying to get a better look. But as I got closer, I realized something was terribly wrong. Her skin was pale and translucent, like she was some kind of ghost. I stumbled back in horror, realizing that I was standing face to face with something that shouldn't exist. But before I could react, she vanished into thin air, leaving me alone in the darkness. I ran as fast as I could, not stopping until I was back in the safety of my hotel room. I locked the door behind me, trying to make sense of what I had just witnessed. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still out there, lurking in the shadows. And as I lay awake in bed, listening to the sound of the waves crashing against the shore, I knew that I would never be able to forget the horrors of that abandoned fishing village. I was out on a solitary fishing expedition in the open sea, just me and the endless expanse of water stretching out in every direction. The fog was thick that day, rolling in from the horizon and shrouding everything in a dense mist. As I navigated through the fog, I spotted something looming in the distance. It was a ship, drifting aimlessly on the waves. At first, I thought maybe it was just another fishing vessel, lost in the fog like me. But as I got closer, I realized something was off. There was no movement on deck, no sign of life anywhere aboard the ship. It was like a ghost ship, abandoned in the middle of the ocean. I felt a chill run down my spine as I approached cautiously, unsure of what I would find. I called out, but there was no response, just the sound of the waves lapping against the hull. I tied up my boat and climbed aboard, my heart pounding in my chest. The air was thick with the smell of salt and decay, like something had died out there on the water. I searched the ship from top to bottom, but there was no sign of the crew. It was like they had vanished into thin air. I felt a growing sense of unease as I realized that I was alone on this abandoned vessel, surrounded by nothing but fog and ocean for miles in every direction. I tried to rationalize what I was seeing, telling myself that maybe the crew had abandoned ship in a hurry, or that they had fallen overboard and drifted away in the current. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. The way the ship was drifting, aimlessly, with no one at the helm, it was like it was waiting for something. I made my way back to my boat, feeling more anxious than ever. I knew I needed to get out of there, to put as much distance between me and that ghost ship as possible. As I untied the ropes and prepared to leave, I heard a sound coming from below deck. It was faint at first, barely audible over the roar of the waves, but then it grew louder and more distinct. It was laughter. Maniacal, unhinged laughter, echoing through the empty halls of the ship. I froze, my blood running cold as I realized that I wasn't alone after all. There was someone else on board, someone who didn't want me to leave. I scrambled back onto the ship, my heart pounding in my chest as I searched for the source of the laughter. But no matter where I looked, I couldn't find anyone. I felt like I was losing my mind, like the walls of the ship were closing in around me. I knew I needed to get out of there, to escape before whatever was haunting that ship found me. I raced back to my boat, not stopping until I was safely away from that cursed vessel. As I looked back one last time, I saw the fog closing in around it, swallowing it whole. I don't know what I encountered out there on the open sea, and I don't think I ever want to know. I was on a road trip, cruising down backcountry roads with no particular destination in mind. I was running low on fuel, so I pulled into this remote gas station in the middle of nowhere. As I stepped inside, I immediately felt eyes on me. There were a group of locals hanging out by the counter, talking in hushed whispers. They stopped as soon as I walked in, turning to stare at me with intense curiosity. I tried to ignore them, focusing on filling up my tank and getting back on the road. But they seemed overly eager to strike up a conversation, asking me where I was headed and if I needed any help. I felt a growing sense of unease as they crowded around me, their smiles too wide and their eyes too bright. It was like they were trying too hard to be friendly, like they had something to hide. I tried to brush it off, telling myself I was just being paranoid. But as I paid for my gas and made my way back to my car, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. As I pulled out of the gas station, I noticed a car following me. It was one of the locals from the gas station, tailing me closely as I drove down the deserted back roads. I tried to lose them, taking a series of sharp turns and detours, but they stayed right on my tail. I started to panic, wondering what they wanted from me and why they were following me. I considered pulling over and confronting them, but something told me it wouldn't end well. So, I kept driving, hoping to find help or a way to escape. But no matter how fast I drove or how many turns I took, they stayed right behind me, like they were toying with me, leading me deeper into the wilderness. I felt like a trapped animal, with nowhere to run and no one to turn to for help. I knew I had to do something, anything, to get away from them. Finally, I spotted a turnoff up ahead, a narrow dirt road leading off into the trees. Without thinking, I slammed on the brakes and swerved onto the dirt road, praying it would lead me to safety. As I drove deeper into the forest, the car following me fell further and further behind. I breathed a sigh of relief, grateful to have escaped whatever danger they posed. I drove for hours, not stopping until I was safely back on the main road, far away from that remote gas station and the locals who had tried to trap me. I was out camping in this secluded forest clearing, surrounded by nothing but trees for miles in every direction. It was the perfect spot for a little peace and quiet, or so I thought. As I set up my tent, I noticed something strange about the trees surrounding the clearing. There were these symbols etched into the bark, like someone had carved them there with a knife. At first, I didn't think much of it. Maybe it was just some kids messing around, or maybe it was some kind of natural phenomenon. But the more I looked at them, the more uneasy I felt. As night fell, I built a fire and settled in for the evening, trying to shake off the feeling of unease. But then, I heard it. Whispers, echoing through the woods like the wind through the trees. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. I strained to listen, trying to make out what the whispers were saying, but they were too faint, too distant. I tried to tell myself it was just my imagination, that I was letting my fear get the best of me. But deep down, I knew there was something out there in the darkness, something sinister lurking just beyond the trees. I huddled closer to the fire, trying to drown out the whispers with the crackling of the flames. But no matter how hard I tried, they persisted, growing louder and more insistent with each passing moment. I felt like I was being watched, like there were eyes on me from every direction. I wanted to run, to get as far away from that clearing as possible. But something held me back, some primal instinct that told me I wouldn't make it out alive if I tried. I sat there for what felt like hours, paralyzed with fear, until finally, the whispers stopped. The forest fell silent once again, like nothing had ever happened. I waited until morning to pack up my camp and get out of there, not wanting to spend another minute in that cursed clearing. As I hiked back to civilization, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had been watching me, something ancient and malevolent. I tried to put the experience behind me, to tell myself it was just a trick of the mind. But deep down, I knew the truth. There was something out there in the woods, something that didn't want me there. I vowed never to return to that forest, to stay as far away from those whispers as possible. But even now, as I sit here writing this, I can still hear them echoing in the back of my mind, a constant reminder of the terror I felt that night in the secluded clearing. I was a journalist, sent to investigate reports of a missing person in a remote town. The town was tucked away in the mountains, far from the hustle and bustle of civilization. It was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone else's business, or so I thought. As I arrived in town, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The streets were deserted, and the few people I did see seemed wary of outsiders. I tried to ask around about the missing person, but no one seemed willing to talk. They just gave me these blank stares, like they didn't want to get involved. I knew I had to dig deeper to uncover the truth behind the disappearance. So, I started poking around, asking questions and snooping around where I wasn't supposed to. That's when I stumbled upon it. A hidden community, tucked away in the mountains, living off the grid and off the radar of the outside world. At first, I thought maybe they were just a group of survivalists or doomsday preppers, trying to escape the chaos of the modern world. But the more I learned about them, the more I realized that there was something darker at play. They had their own rules, their own way of doing things. And anyone who tried to leave or speak out against them was dealt with swiftly and mercilessly. I knew I was treading on dangerous ground, but I couldn't turn back now. I had to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. As I delved deeper into the community, I uncovered evidence of unspeakable horrors. Abuse, corruption, and even murder were all part of their everyday lives. I tried to document everything, to gather enough evidence to bring them to justice. But the deeper I dug, the more I realized that I was in way over my head. I started to feel like I was being watched, like there were eyes on me from every direction. I knew I had to get out of there before it was too late. But as I tried to leave town, I realized that they weren't going to let me go that easily. They knew what I was up to, and they weren't about to let me expose their dark secrets to the world. I tried to run, to escape into the mountains and disappear before they could catch me. But they were one step ahead of me, closing in from all sides. I felt like a trapped animal, with nowhere to run and no one to turn to for help. I knew I had to think fast if I wanted to survive. I managed to slip away into the woods, hiding out in a remote cabin until I could come up with a plan. But even there, I wasn't safe. They found me, cornering me in the woods and dragging me back to town. I fought back with everything I had, but it was no use. They were too strong, too determined to see their dark secrets remain hidden. I thought I was done for, that I would never make it out of that town alive. But just when it seemed like all hope was lost, help arrived. The authorities had been tipped off about what was going on in the town, and they swooped in to rescue me before it was too late. As I was led away from that nightmare town, I couldn't help but feel grateful to be alive. But even now, as I sit here writing this, I can't shake the feeling that they're still out there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for their next unsuspecting victim. The island was shrouded in mystery, its dense jungle canopy hiding secrets just waiting to be uncovered. With my trusty machete in hand, I hacked my way through the underbrush, eager to see what lay hidden within its depths. And then, just when I thought I had seen everything the island had to offer, I stumbled upon a hidden temple nestled deep in the jungle. Its stone walls were covered in intricate carvings, depicting scenes of ancient rituals and ceremonies. Intrigued, I decided to explore further, eager to uncover the secrets hidden within the temple's depths. But as I ventured deeper into its corridors, a sense of unease settled over me. The air grew colder as I descended into the darkness, the sound of my footsteps echoing off the walls. I could feel the weight of centuries pressing down on me, as if the very walls of the temple were alive with ancient energy. But then, just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, I heard the sound of movement up ahead, a soft rustling that sent a chill down my spine. I froze in place, my heart pounding in my chest as I strained to listen for any sign of danger. And then, to my horror, I caught sight of them, shadowy figures lurking in the darkness, their eyes gleaming with malevolent intent. Panic surged through me as I realized that I was not alone in the temple. With trembling hands, I searched for a way out, but the corridors seemed to twist and turn in on themselves, leading me deeper into the heart of the temple. I knew I had to find a way to escape before it was too late. But as I searched for an exit, I stumbled upon a chamber filled with ancient artifacts, golden idols, jewel-encrusted masks, and ornate carvings that seemed to pulse with energy. It was like something out of a nightmare, a testament to the power of the curse that lay dormant within the temple's depths. Panic surged through me as I realized that I had unwittingly awakened the curse, unleashing its wrath upon myself. I knew I had to find a way to break the curse before it consumed me completely. With every ounce of strength I had left, I fought to resist the curse's influence, but it seemed to seep into my very soul, twisting and corrupting me from within. I could feel its dark power coursing through my veins, threatening to consume me entirely. But then, just when I thought all hope was lost, I caught sight of a glimmer of light up ahead, a sign that there was still a chance for me to escape. With renewed determination, I pushed myself towards it, ignoring the pain and exhaustion that threatened to overwhelm me. And then, finally, I burst through the surface and into the open air, gasping for breath as I emerged from the depths of the temple. I collapsed onto the ground, exhausted and shaken, but alive. I'm a geologist, spending my days conducting field research in remote and rugged landscapes. It's a solitary job, but I thrive on the challenge of uncovering the secrets hidden beneath the Earth's surface. On one particular expedition, I found myself exploring a remote canyon, its walls towering above me like ancient sentinels. As I hiked deeper into the canyon, I stumbled upon a hidden cave system nestled in the rocky terrain. Intrigued, I donned my headlamp and descended into the darkness, eager to explore the caverns that lay hidden beneath the surface. The air grew cooler as I ventured deeper into the cave, the sound of dripping water echoing off the walls. But as I delved further into the depths of the cave system, I started to notice strange markings on the walls, scratch marks and gouges that spoke of a presence lurking in the shadows. I tried to shake off the feeling of unease that settled over me, chalking it up to my overactive imagination. But as I continued to explore, the sense of foreboding only grew stronger. And then, just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, I heard the sound of movement up ahead, a soft rustling that sent a chill down my spine. I froze in place, my heart pounding in my chest as I strained to listen for any sign of danger. And then, to my horror, I caught sight of them, ancient creatures, their eyes gleaming in the darkness as they skittered across the cave floor. They were unlike anything I had ever seen before, their twisted forms a testament to centuries of evolution in the depths of the earth. Panic surged through me as I realized that I had disturbed their habitat, that I was intruding on their territory. I knew I had to get out of there before it was too late. But as I turned to flee, I found my path blocked by more of the creatures, their numbers swarming around me like a swarm of insects. I was trapped, with no way to escape their relentless onslaught. With mounting fear, I fought to keep calm and think rationally. I knew that I couldn't outrun them, but perhaps I could find a way to outsmart them. I searched frantically for an exit, my hands shaking as I tried to find a way out of the cave system. But every tunnel seemed to lead deeper into the darkness, away from the safety of the surface. And then, just when I thought all hope was lost, I caught sight of a narrow passageway up ahead, a glimmer of light shining through the darkness like a beacon of hope. With renewed determination, I pushed myself towards it, ignoring the creatures that nipped at my heels. And then, finally, I burst through the surface and into the open air, gasping for breath as I emerged from the depths of the cave. I collapsed onto the ground, exhausted and shaken, but alive. I had escaped the clutches of the ancient creatures, but the memory of that terrifying encounter would haunt me for the rest of my days. It was a stark reminder of the dangers that lurk in the depths of the earth, waiting to ensnare those who dare to venture too close.